Hey, how's it
Hi.
going? Hi there. I'm Ross Bryant,
I'm Ashley Birch.
and welcome to this Vampires of Pittsburgh orientation video. Orientation video is the best part of any onboarding process. Welcome.
In your packets, you'll find some information about Vampires of Pittsburgh. It
Lanyards
is
on,
a
everyone.
Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition game set in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, a city noted for its gothic horrors. And so up till now, Ashley and Thomas and Jared and I have done 30 episodes of this game. And our characters have met literally dozens of non-player characters. And so we're kind of doing this video to catch you up if you're new to the stream, if you're just kind of dropping yourself into the strange, wonderful, and twisted world of Vampires of Pittsburgh.
And if you are enticed by our player and character recap, then check out new episodes of the series. They're going to be appearing Sunday at 2 p.m. on Twitch and 24 hours later on YouTube.
Yeah. So without further ado, we're just going to kind of get into it and run down the characters that we've met so far, because the characters are a very important part of this. I'd never played Vampire the Masquerade before this, but what I've learned is that this is a game of alliances and betrayals. So the game is very much driven by the characters that you meet along the way. Yes. So enjoy our first slide. This is very much like an onboarding video so far. Here are our primary characters. From left to right, Curtis Krieger, Miles Vanderbuck, and Jen Brown.
Oh, hey, it's me. I play Jen Brown. She is a thin blood vampire, which what that means basically is that she doesn't look like a vampire. She looks like a human. She was a tech CEO turned leader of a rebellion that probably has failed. But her main goal was to break away from the Camarilla, otherwise known as sort of the vampire government that was controlling her and her pals, Curtis and Miles. And she has to mix blood with liquor, as you're seeing here, because otherwise she can't drink it.
Yeah. Most of Jen Brown's incredible thin blood powers are only available to her if she turns into a sort of a bloody flair bartender, as shown by these images. But she is a highly competent and intelligent cyber hackster who loves to just like jack into the mainframe and get us in places that we wouldn't otherwise.
She's a real Matrix kid. She's real, she's a real
crash override. She's a real acid burn.
She's a real hacker. With an @ instead of an A. She's
a ghost in a shell, and she's here to get into your networks. And yeah, she has a heart. She's closely connected to her humanity in a way that I feel like the other characters maybe are not. So she's tethering them all to their humanity by the most gossamerest of threads. Yes, and this is Curtis Krieger. This is the character that I portray. As you can tell, a haunted and tortured soul. So Curtis is a troubled sort. He is a veteran of the war in Afghanistan who is suffering with some issues of stress and trauma based on the experiences that he had over there. But he also, as part of his reintroduction to society back in the States, became addicted to opiates, and so was very upset and a rabble rouser in the course of his recovery about the way that veterans are treated in America, and this put him onto the radar of the anarch movement, who thought that his anti-authoritarian tendencies might serve their purposes. Of course, the Camarilla, the vampire government, got to him first, and so he is. You can see him there with his loyal dog, lapping up her sweet blood. Yes, this is his what they call in Vampire a familus, his familiar, that he is bonded to him with a diet of sweet vitae, and the two of them are an inseparable pair of buddies.
Ruby is a gangrel, is that right? A gangrel vampire?
Yes, a gangrel, which is the most kind of bestial vampires. They're the ones who kind of are running amok through the forest, sprouting claws and communing with nature. yeah, so I think of Curtis as kind of dog-like. He is very fiercely loyal to his friends, really loves positive reinforcement and attention and pleasing. He's a people pleaser, but if backed into a corner, he lashes out and lashes out hard.
Yes, Curtis had a bit of an issue finding sort of a father figure to attach to.
Yes, he's attached to several daddy figures over the course of the game, paging Dr. Freud. And so here we have Miles Vanderbuck, possibly the most unassuming vampire of the three. He's a crusty old union dock worker.
Played wonderfully by Thomas Middleditch.
Yes, doing his best, just off Nolte voice. Miles is a Bruja vampire, which I think means they have like powerful, aggro, and also anti-authoritarian. And he was seduced by the power that being a vampire gives you. He
was for a time under the thrall of the Prince of Pittsburgh, until he was broken out of it during a pretty dramatic series of events where we took over the Anarch Revolution. But more than anything, Miles was extremely fiercely loyal to his daughter. So there was often a wedge driven between Jen and Miles. Jen constantly trying to create this rebellion that could take down the Camarilla, and Miles more concerned with keeping his daughter safe, and that would put them at odds a lot. He was a force of chaos, our dear Miles.
Made him a loose cannon.
Sabrina.
No picture for Sabrina because bad things have happened. Bad
things have happened to poor Sabrina. Sabrina was what is called a touchstone. So for vampires and Vampires the Masquerade, you usually have a character who's still human, who's tethering you to the mortal world, who sort of grounds your humanity. And if something happens to your touchstone, it can be bad news for any sort of semblance of humanity left in your vampire. And Sabrina is Jen Brown's touchstone. She was the COO of their shared tech company called Grouper. But Sabrina got mixed up with some vampire nonsense because of mostly because Jen Brown was trying to make some Game of Thrones-esque plays that went wrong. And it's called Vampire the Masquerade because the masquerade is what is kept over, it's sort of the wool pulled over the eyes of the people in Pittsburgh and across the country and the world, presumably. The masquerade is creating the illusion that vampires don't exist. So it's very important to the Camarilla that the masquerade not be broken. Sabrina saw a bunch of vampires do a bunch of vampire shit. And Jen knew that if they found out that Sabrina knew that they might kill her. So Jen tried to what's called ghouling her, which means that she feeds, a vampire can have a human feed from them, and then they're sort of connected to each other. But because Jen is a thin blood vampire, it didn't go so well. So Sabrina became addicted to blood, but not under its control at all. So she went around town kind of trying to find vampire blood.
Blabbing to every Tom, Dick, and vampire hunter that she was.
Every Tom, Dick, and vampire.
Yeah.
That didn't go well. And so I think it was Curtis's former father figure who sort of said that Sabrina needed to be taken care of. Jen didn't want her to be killed, so she gave her over to her then adoptive mother figure, Sonia. And that's where we left it, basically, is that Sabrina is now under the control of Sonia, who has since become Jen's worst enemy, because since Jen and Curtis and Miles joined the Anarch movement, they're at direct odds with the Camarilla, which Sonia is a major part of. So I don't know what's happening to Sabrina, but it's not good, whatever it is. And that means that Jen's humanity is in a spot.
Yeah. Speaking of touchstones, Craig is Curtis's touchstone. He's played less a part in our narrative, as I think he's maybe only appeared for a total of 45 seconds of actual playtime. But he is a former an army buddy of Curtis's, who is also in recovery with him. And Craig was last seen still using back out on the street. So he's floating around in Pittsburgh, and Curtis may have an eye on using him, befriending him, or perhaps keeping him safe. But Craig is a wild card out there on the streets. We don't know what's going to happen with him.
Amy Vanderbuck. This was Miles's daughter, Amy. Amy, as far as we know, is okay, but she was being used as a pawn to sort of manipulate Miles for a while. A lot of there were vampire hunters watching her at some point. Camarilla trying to jockey for her to get Miles to sort of take a knee to the Camarilla and their justice.
They knew that she's a lever that they can push to get to him. And Amy is also in a relationship with a guy named Travis.
That sounds right?
Yeah, who is like a real Yinzer ding dong that that Miles hates.
Yinzer ding dong.
Oh, yes.
New player.
Now, Miles Vanderbuck, when last seen, plunged out of the window of a very tall building, which delivers the kind of damage that a vampire cannot easily recover from, and perhaps has perished. So there may be a new player character, new vamp
about town.
Mm-hmm. A hot new vamp on the scene. Everybody's talking about it. So let's break down the sort of power dynamics of Pittsburgh. We got the Camarilla, the Camarilla. I say Camarilla because it always rolls off the tongue more Latin to me. I don't know.
More,
it's like quesadilla or
Camarilla. But Miss Sonia.
Miss Sonia has kind of become our big bad.
She has become our big bad. Also, this art is done by Ross Bryant, and it's fantastic. So Miss Sonia was Jen Brown's sort of adoptive vampire mom for a minute. She's what's called a Nosferatu vampire. She's a very, very old vampire, and she trades in secrets, and she sort of has her fingers in every pie, as the case may be. But she has been sort of the power behind the throne, as far as I have sort of seen it. She's a very, very powerful part of the Camarilla, and she has a lot of information, and she was gaining a lot of power over the time that we were in the Camarilla. And then when we became anarchs, she was the vampire I don't know about you, but she was the vampire I was the most worried about.
Mm-hmm. Churchill Jackson, Daddy. Churchill Jackson was held the position in the Camarilla as the sheriff of Pittsburgh, who was sort of the law and order for the vampire community around town. And he became the adoptive sire or boss father figure to Curtis. And so he sent him on various missions, used him as his little attack dog and minion. And he was very much about maintaining order and maintaining the masquerade to maintain the safety of all the vampires in Pittsburgh and destroying the anarchs that throw all that into disarray. In a very Oedipal turn of events, Curtis, when they went over to the anarchs, had to take out the person that he saw as one of the biggest threats, and Curtis, with the help of a character who we'll meet a little later named Mary, destroyed Churchill and killed him. So he is now off the board. But he was a very threatening presence.
Adelaide Ross, the former Prince of Pittsburgh. So in our first session ever, there was a prince in charge of the Camarilla. He got thrown out a window, and the person that replaced him was Adelaide Ross. She had sort of like a twinkling laugh, was very scary to me, but befriended Miles and blood bonded to him. And so for a while, Miles was sort of under her thrall, and he found it very, very hard to defy her in any way. So it took a lot of doing and a lot of PvP for us to sort of get him out from under her thumb. And eventually he ended up cutting off her head with a katana.
Yeah, so happy ending.
Happy ending.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Orman. Dr. Orman, I think he's the head of the Tremere, who are sort of the history keepers of the vampires. Dr. Orman's a little bit of a creep. He wanted to study Jen Brown because she's a thin blood. And he became a lot more relevant as we became anarchs because, not to put too fine a point on it, but basically there was this mythical object that allowed us to turn any kind of shitty blood into really, really sweet grade A blood.
Sweet premium.
Without having to hunt. And so that was a big boon for the anarchs. And it was this object, it was an urn. And Dr. Orman was aware of the urn, wanted the urn back from us, and led to a very, very big fight, which I'm just going to go ahead and say we didn't win. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say we didn't win.
T.J. Cope was a policeman, mortal, who is we referred to ghouling. He was ghouled by the Camarilla to run their errands and be sort of eyes on the ground in the mortal world. So he often fell to being our sort of like herding us around as we were little baby vamps. He would send us on our missions and keep tabs on us. But as part of a show of loyalty to the anarchs, Curtis shot TJ Cope in the dang head. So he's off the board as well. But that's part of the Camarilla's tactics. They get in with the caps.
Obadiah Griffin. The
Ventru.
Ventru sounds right.
I'm using all this vocabulary like it's like I know what all of it means. He's the Ventru Primogen. Actually, I believe that's true. He's the boss of this particular clan. And what I remember about I think one of the things with the Ventru is that they have very particular feeding habits. So like maybe you can only drink from the blood of somebody who like just ate broccoli or whatever.
Yeah, they're very picky eaters.
He had a particular taste for Irish people.
He did.
He was having them shipped special.
Buy out Jen's company, Grouper. So he was a bit of a thorn in our side, and we were able to take him down back when we were part of the Camarilla, because we found out that he was basically breaking the rules, eating where he shouldn't have. Mm-hmm. And the justice of the Camarilla was swift and intense, and he got taken off the board as well.
Yeah, I know who this character is. He's a guy who I know he's a vampire.
Is he? Or is he a human?
Hi, everybody. Storyteller Jared Logan here.
Bail us out, please.
I've created dozens and dozens of NPCs, and I don't remember who they are most of the time. But Mason Allberger was the Malkavian Primogen. He and Miles kind of had a scene or two together. Regardless, he's still at
Jared,
large.
Was he the guy who Miles took his car and he's the guy who had the katana?
That's right.
That's right. Okay. Yes.
Right. Mason Allberger is the type of guy who drives around in a sports car with a katana and a ponytail.
Exactly. Mason Allberger, mostly important as the origin of Miles's katana. Okay, bye.
Bye. Roman.
So Roman is
one of my
the
favorite drawings of yours, I think. He really captured his spirit, I think.
Yeah, dropping into a jovial Slav squat. Roman is a Nosferatu vampire affiliated with the Camarilla and a muscle for Miss Sonia and the
kind of
gang.
A party dude.
But he's also kind of a party guy.
He's kind of a party dude. He was always down. He wanted to have a good time.
Yeah, of course, my horse. He's a cool guy. He's a wild and crazy guy.
He's a wild and crazy guy until our fight against the Camarilla, our last Anarch fight against the Camarilla, in which Miles ate him for threatening his daughter.
Sucked him good.
Sucked him nice and good.
Sucked him dry.
Kaput.
Ooh, here's a Misery. She is associated with a coterie of vampires in Pittsburgh called the Blood Dance. Very goth, very loved. Who run various nightclubs and use them as a front for giving mortals the bit of the suck. And she in particular seems to run basically a cult of acolytes out of a cleaning company.
Yes.
And she works, and her front is as a nightclub impresario and dominatrix.
For a minute, we had our eyes on her as a potential convert. There is a thin blood spell that Jen can use where she can change her gender. So she changed into James Brown and tried to seduce Misery both literally and figuratively over to the anarch side. It went tits up because we realized that she has a cult and wanted to indoctrinate James into it. So instead, Curtis sent a bunch of rats into her cult headquarters, and then we killed her boyfriend.
Yeah. When in doubt, rat attack. Okay. Now that we've dealt with the authoritarian aristocrats of Pittsburgh, now let's move on to the hard scrabble freedom fighters, the anarchs, the crew that we're now associated with. So Buddy was one of the first independent or non-Camarilla vampires that we met. He worked out of a vintage motorcycle shop out in the outskirts of Pittsburgh, and he was the one running the human trafficking ring that was bringing people into Pittsburgh for people like Obadiah Griffin to feed on. He is we don't know what his clan affiliations are, but he has the eerie ability to make himself invisible on cameras and to summon like corporeal shadow around him to just blot himself out and cover himself in darkness.
Yeah,
but
he's a creepy boy. He's not
like
with us.
Yeah, he's a creepy boy. And as far as we know, he's still sitting in a box in the basement of the U.S. Steel building, where the Camarilla makes their headquarters.
Erasmus was the former leader of the Anarchs. He is actually the reason that Jen, Curtis, and Miles were turned against their will, basically, into vampires. He meant to, it was sort of his recruiting methodology for getting more people into the Anarch movement. Sort of a hippie-ish dude, sort of tenuously holding all of the Anarchs together until he made the misstep of trying to kill Miles Vanderbuck. And Jen and Curtis gave him the old boot and staked him and took over the Anarch movement instead. And Erasmus might also still be in a box somewhere in an abandoned hospital on the outskirts of Pittsburgh.
Yeah. Mary.
Oh,
so
Mary.
This is one of the most eerie and compelling characters that we've encountered. Mary is working with is just affiliated with the Anarchs, but she is a vampire of incredible age and spookiness. Has quite a bit of power, and let's just say presence, gravitas. She has the tendency to just kind of appear behind you when you don't had no idea she was in the room. But she's also a religious fanatic and seems to be committed to this idea that the beasts within vampires are actually angels yearning to be free. And her affiliation with the Anarch movement is conditional on the fact that they win converts by redeeming them to this way of thought, and which our trio has not been so good at.
No, not really. And Mary is sort of the only real muscle behind the Anarch movement. She's extremely powerful. She is the person that, as Ross mentioned earlier, decapitated Churchill Jackson, basically. So she was sort of an army unto herself, but also completely unpredictable and uncontrollable.
Yes, Cross, seen here in a rare moment of whimsy and charm, is one of the Anarch muscle boys. He is he sees himself as a certified tough guy, paramilitary badass, but he's kind of a goon, and he's so ostentatious about his badassery that he has a cross tattooed to his face. Something that makes it, real easy to pass in polite society. But hey, who am I to judge? The breakout character of the whole series, Bob.
What does Bob do? Bob was I believe he was a data analytics person before he became a vampire. He's a part of the Anarch movement. What does he do really? Mostly
he complains, he whines.
and got Jen Brown killed or close to killed, basically, in our last fight. But that's a bit of a grape juice stain on his shirt. He's just sort of an unassuming guy, just trying his best in the anarch movement and not doing a whole hell of a lot to help.
Yeah. One thing I like about this game is that your image of vampires is of kind of like long-haired, no
Sort of sexy, mysterious,
like fishnet gloves. But then a lot of the vampires you end up meeting are just like middle management doofs like Bob.
Yeah, a 40-year-old guy who has like a Honda Civic.
Yeah. So Than is another vampire that she is one of the religious true believers, am I right?
I believe so.
So she's kind of maybe more committed to Mary's way of thinking, that like the anarch movement is about it's a cultic, that there are forces in the blood that need to be tapped with arcane rituals and mysticism, and she's witchy. She's a real Stevie Nicks type, a real Kate Bush.
Rhodes is a part of the anarch movement, very tenuously. He is sort of a redneck good old boy who mostly just wants to create chaos.
Yeah.
And he has a lot of guns and a brother at his disposal, and they mostly complain and want to shoot stuff. They're sort of the other end of the Bob spectrum, where they're pretty dangerous and they're pretty uncontrollable. But Jen decided to keep them around because she thought that the anarch movement needed bodies and people that could wield weapons. And so there's sort of a tenuous connection between the anarchs and Rhodes, but it's always on the verge of breaking. Yeah.
Rhodes always sounds like he's on the verge of saying something really problematic.
Yeah.
He's trouble. He's trouble. Mortals that we know. The day shift. Mortals I have seen. The day shift is a group of policemen that the crew encountered. They were the policemen that were being used by the Camarilla to run errands during the day. TJ Cope was associated with them. So if the vampires needed some stuff done during the daylight hours, they'd send these guys to go do it. Now, as it turned out, the way that they were accomplishing that was convincing them that whoever the vampire liaison was between the Camarilla and these guys had convinced them that they were a good vampire, and that everything that they were doing was on the side of good and light in this war between vampires. Basically, they were being manipulated by a good vampire, quote unquote, that the day shift referred to as the Edward, in a nod to Twilight.
Most of them are dead now.
Yeah, they're like most of the people we meet, they gone.
What happened at the Cathedral of Learning? What an
Good
excellent question. So, as we mentioned before, the Anarchs and the Camarilla were at war. The Anarchs were not doing too bad, but then after a series of masquerade-breaking events, the Camarilla got wind of where the Anarchs were stationed, and they also got a hold of one of our number named Kenya, and were holding her hostage. And their demand was for us to trade the urn, which was allowing us to make that sweet, sweet blood to feed the anarch movement, in exchange for Kenya. So we merry band of anarchs showed up at the
regulators mounted up, and
what happened for us?
Well, we decided to strike hard, strike quick, and when we all arrived in force, we were told, "Hey, send your army home and give us the urn." And we were like, "No, thank you." And they were like, "Give us the urn." And we were like, "No, really, no, thank you." At which point, Jen Brown called their damn bluff and smashed this priceless ancient artifact that keeps hunger at bay. And then all hell, as they say, broke loose. We began trying to set fire to the building. Miles Vanderbuck chopified the head off of the Camarilla liaison who had brought us there. People were being thrown out of windows. Mary went charging up to fight in the form of a giant bestial goat, and was thrown back down to earth by an equally bestial looking humanoid gargoyle, stone monster, and all sorts of melees were happening as the fires were attempted to be set in the lobby of this building. Crazy magical sigils put there by the occultic minds of the Tremere created a decompression implosion that sucked the air out of the space and stopped the fire while breaking the skulls of all and sundry. At this point, Miles Vanderbuck sucked the blood out of Roman, and
Mary saw,
which is a big no-no to a religious zealot such as herself.
So then Mary and Miles started having a bit of a fight up on the 40th floor as Jen was trying to talk down this gargoyle beast who seemed to be compelled to fight against its will.
And things were going so well. Jen was making such headway. It looked as though everything was going to go fine. Like we were going to turn this stone boy to our side, and then Bob went and bobbed it up for everybody.
He went ahead and shot the gargoyle, which made it right angry, and it sunk its claws and its teeth into Jen Brown, putting her into torpor pretty quick.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, up on the 40th floor, Miles is getting thrown out of a window to his almost certain death, and then Curtis sort of had to get the rest of the anarchs to scatter.
They scattered. I heard Curtis heard sirens coming. He blasted the gargoyle creature in its fleshy eyeball and blew its head open, and attempted to pull the wool over the eyes of the first on the scene first responders by telling them that, like, there's some crazy stuff going on, take me away. So as he was rushed away in an ambulance, he knows not whether his friends are alive or whether they sleep the sleep of ages.
And that's what happened.
Yeah. Still pretty simple stuff. Pretty cut and dry. What's next? Yes, a big question mark. All is in shambles.
Oh, I can jump in on what's next. I don't want to tell too much, except to say that after the horrific battle at the Cathedral of Learning, we are skipping ahead 1 year into the future, into the year 2020, into current times. And our new series is entitled Vampires of Pittsburgh Lockdown. And we will find out the final fates of our friends and meet some new friends. We're going to meet some new characters. I'm really excited about it.
So are we.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, hey, look at that.
Fun new logo.
Yes.
Well, I'll get out of here. I want to tell everybody, join us for episode 31 this Sunday, Vampires of Pittsburgh Lockdown. And I'll let you guys bid adieu to our viewers and our new viewers who are hopefully watching this video.
Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and getting caught up on our little cast of characters. It's a great stream.
Yeah. In these mad times, come and spend some time with us, relaxing in the escapist world of bloodshed and internecine manipulation and horror of the vampire world.
And come join us Sunday. Hope to see you there.
Welcome, one of us. One of us.
One of us.